But last time the video was about how perfect is the enemy of good. And I see this all the time, how it's mind for self-development, especially when you're like building habits and you're trying to build like a specific streak of that habit. You're trying to get momentum into that habit, right? It's a momentum-based thing. Done lots of videos on like energy units or charts that say, hey, it doesn't reset at 0 when you slip up or anything else like that. That's what I mean by perfect is the enemy of good. A lot of times is that be feeling good and feeling motivated, and then one little slip up and back to 0. That all comes from mindset and what I like to call the all or nothing mentality. And that's usually where it goes. You have it all, and then one thing goes wrong and you have nothing, even though you've made tremendous progress. So mindset is what determines action. So before affecting what actions you want to take, if you affix the mindset rooted in what you want it to be, then that'll really help. That'll really help, because your mindset will then funnel the actions into there. And so if your mindset is on point and you spend time cultivating a mindset, then when you have a slip up or whatever else, it's kind of like, oh, hey, I slipped up, but it's not that big of a deal. Or, oh, hey, this is an opportunity for something else. So anyway, I'm going to get to Alo's question right here. But focusing on mindset is almost creates like a positive spiral instead of a downward spiral, like an upward spiral, right? That creates a lot of momentum continuing on in the future in that kind of way too. So, all right, Alo. Hey, Deepflow chat. Curious about your thoughts on removing yourself from the commercial matrix and reduce stress loads. The holiday seasons can be hectic and a balance can be hard to find, it seems. Yeah. First of all, thanks so much for your question. Yeah, removing yourself from the commercial matrix and reducing stress loads. So yes, the holiday times are very stressful, right? And it's interesting because people seem to also very much enjoy it. And it goes hand in hand. It's almost like the stress is like this accepted phenomenon. It's like, oh, I'm going to see family. Oh, that's going to be stressful. Oh, I have to, buy all these gifts. That's going to be stressful. Oh, I have to host all these parties. That's going to be, or I have to go to these parties, or I'm going to have to see this person, or I'm going to have to do this thing, right? It creates this stressful type of environment, and commercial matrix, meaning like, hey, you're also expected to buy a lot, spend a lot, participate in the mainstream type of modality, even if you don't believe in necessarily that mainstream modality, or you have a religion that is different and doesn't celebrate the holiday du jour or whatever, right? You're still expected to participate in some kind of degree, and that creates a stress load. So it's really interesting. I advocate for me, holiday time is very interesting, and the positives are usually spending time with people, right? Or if there's a gift exchange or some kind of food exchange or whatever else, it's like the thoughtfulness or the connection to the other person or the togetherness that it creates and the bonding, right? More so than the thing itself, more so than the party itself, more so than how fancy it is or what the neighbors think or anything else like that, right? It's about creating connection. So like Deepflow Dojo, focusing on connection, focusing on interaction, focusing on depth, right? And clarity and peace and things like that. So, Alo, since that's the question we got going right now, I'll go deep into it. My thoughts on removing from commercial matrix and reducing stress loads is realizing what during the holidays is the thing that you enjoy the most and what is the thing that you are stressed out about the most, right? And you take those two things and you start to like isolate them a little bit, right? I enjoy getting to see my family, or I enjoy getting to eat Christmas cookies, or I enjoy whatever. And I don't enjoy large crowds. I don't enjoy, spending way too much of my money. I don't enjoy having to be around this person who always berates me and everything else. And what you do is you kind of like can isolate those types of things, and then for your own unique holiday experience, try to spend more time doing the things that highlight the things that you enjoy and minimize the things that you don't, right? so often we go through trying to like handle, oh, okay, this is what we've always done and I hate it, but traditions don't have to stay traditions forever, right? And part of being an individual and a free thinker could be having the courage to stand up for the things that you like, stand up for the things that you don't support. And it doesn't have to be in the most grating way, but being maybe a little bit more vocal about it, and maybe having a few more boundaries for your holiday experience, where that can be one that has a reduced stress load, and can be one that doesn't empty your entire bank account for something that doesn't even garner a connection or doesn't even feel appreciated, or any, just going through the motions at holiday times can lead to quite a bit of stress. But everyone's situation is absolutely unique. So just as a general consensus, trying to sit down, make a list, or just reflect on it on your own. What are the things during the holidays that you really enjoy, that bring you joy, that you're looking forward to? And what are the things that you are dreading? Or what are the things that are really stressful? And how can you try to extract the stressful thing from the joyful thing? And it might be not doing whole parts of the holiday, right? And that might be the only way to do it. But if that's what makes it a less stressful and less commercial type of thing, and that's important to you, then I'd recommend going about it like that. So thanks so much for the question. Can be hectic, and balance can be hard to find. So just final note on balance there with the holidays, it's that type of thing, right? We have to create our own balance point. And just like we have our own center of balance within our own physical bodies, right? We all have our own balance points for everything, right? Some people can handle quite a bit of crowds. Some people can have huge holiday parties and thrive off of it, right? Other people can be like, whoa, this is way too many people. I just walked through the door and I just want to go sit in the corner and be away from everyone. Like, maybe the huge holiday party isn't for you. Maybe the intimate friends gathering. So if it doesn't exist, create it for yourself. There's a concept that you can exchange, do something like I like to call it like a thriftmas, right? Where you make thrift or regift something. And this is a great way to not go commercial, right? And it doesn't matter what, you can call it whatever you want. If you celebrate something different or anything else, you can call it. But if you want to just have like an intentional, maybe it's not even a gift exchange, but maybe it's having a potluck, having people over, having food, right? Maybe it's doing something like that. But if the high stress is tons of people, just keep it intimate, keep it smaller. Like, invite 4 people over, invite 2 people over, your 2 best friends, or a couple family members, or whatever, right? And just do it in a way that's intentional, doesn't break the bank, and there can be the thought into it without the big price tag, without the big expensive food or the big gifts or the huge expectation of, yeah, those would be some of my recommendations for finding balance. We each have our own unique balance point all the time. And during the holidays, balancing stress and enjoyment, it's really great to do that internal work. Figure out what are your triggers for both, what are your things for both, and then try to maximize the positive ones and minimize the negative ones, and see how that practically comes up with. But yeah, that's what I would say for that. Alo, thanks so much for the question, and happy to have you here. Thank you. All right, and so we get another question or a video topic. I've already talked a little bit about channel direction, but I'm just going to reiterate that for a second for the new people here. This is still a self-development channel, right? And it's really great to have a self-development focus. And for some people, that's a certain type of habit. There's been a lot of NoFap content on here. There's been a lot of lifestyle design content on here. There's been a lot of just overall, meditation content on here. Overall leveling up, right? And I like to keep it broad and self-development focused, because then it's more applicable for people. And I also like to put the focus on going deep within yourself to be able to be more self-aware about what helps you, and then apply it, right? Because on any of these self-development journeys, no matter what they are, we're all going to have our own experience with them, right? And it's easy to just listen to a YouTube video from someone or read an article and say, oh, okay, I'll just do that. Or, oh, okay, that's cool. Or, oh, this is a great thing to do, or not, right? And what's most important, though, is that we understand how these new habits or how these new things affect us, if they're affecting us positively or if they're not affecting us positively, and to adjust as needed. Because, like Alo said in his question, the balance point, right? Balance can be hard to find. Balance can be hard to find always, right? In everything that we do. So with balance being so tedious, the only way, it's almost like one of those old doctor's office or gym scales, right? Where you step up, you step up onto it, and then you have to do the little, you slide the thing, and then you have to do and you have to keep adjusting it until things balance, and then you can read your weight, right? The old analog way. It's kind of like that. You have to spend time finding that balance point so that then you can read the information and say, hey, okay, that's where I'm at right now, right? It might not be your weight specifically, but this is my balance point for the holidays, for the balance of like socialness and stress, right? This feels really good. Maybe everyone else thinks my balance point should be here, but they're not me, right? So that's a whole other difficulty, right? Is getting people to accept your own balance point as your own. But anyway, I'm going to move on to, yeah, okay, Light, will this video be saved in the channel after the end of the stream? Yeah, totally. You don't have to stick around for the entire stream. No problem. I am going to post a condensed version probably of it if there's a lot of dead space. But yeah, you'll be able to watch this later. But while you're here, if you do have a question, you can ask it. I can answer it. You can come watch the stream later. You know what I mean? You're here. I appreciate you dropping in and saying hi. So yeah, of course, it will be saved on the channel in something. Yeah. So feel free to ask any video topics or anything else. If not, enjoy the stream later, man. Thank you. All right, Alo. Reconnecting with nature and the traditional purposes behind these holidays has helped me a bunch. Celebrating Yule over Christmas. Yeah, very cool. And that's another, nature is like a really solid way to return to balance. Nature is like the anti-commercial, right? So if it's really great that you seem to have found something that works for you. And in the Northern Hemisphere, right, the holiday times is, for a lot of people, a very difficult time to get into nature because most people want to stay inside because it's cold. But anytime you can find something that works well for you and you can get out there and get out in the stillness of it, and away, especially away from like the busyness, the holidays, there's a lot of busyness, right? There's physically people stuffed indoors doing things, but there's also the hecticness of keeping up with the holiday traditions, whatever the holiday is, keeping up with the expectations of other people, whether that's for gifts, whether that's for showing up to things, whether that's for participating in certain drives or volunteering or whatever, right? There's a lot of expectation being created, and a lot of it can be positive and a lot of it can be negative, right? So it's all about doing what you can do to maintain that balance, but reconnecting with nature and traditional purposes behind the holidays, right? How often did things get lost? There are a lot of people who practice the holidays because they like certain aspects of it, which is what I was talking about before. And that's fine too. There's a lot of people who find a lot of religious or spiritual meaning in the holidays. That's obviously wonderful as well, right? But when people start to take your holiday experience and want to make their holiday experience your holiday experience, and it doesn't align with you and it doesn't balance with you, that can be a big, difficult thing. And that's very common during the holidays, right? You see it all the time. I've experienced it, right? So maintain, but it's hard for you to be strong in what you want if you don't know what you want, right? So anyway, really great, Ayla. Thanks for sharing that. Nature, and happy Yule. Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. All right, Light. My question is, what's your thoughts on your book recommendations about the science of celibacy? Am I really aging faster every time I relapse, like those animals in those studies mentioned in the book? Good question, Light. And yeah, like I said, If you can't stick around for the answer, you're welcome to answer follow-up things as I'm talking or whatever. But if you got to go, you can watch this later, no worries. So the Science of Celibacy book, the thoughts on it, right? Okay. Are you aging faster every time, quote unquote, you relapse, aka release? And I think the answer is yes, but by how much? It's probably not a ton, right? You're not shaving a year off your life every time, right? Obviously, a year is an absurd amount of time. But like, there is some balance there too. We've been talking about balance, right? And it actually ties in quite well with the things like stress and so like retaining energy can be very effective as an anti-aging thing. We are always aging, right? We are always slowly degrading as physical beings, right? That's an inevitable truth. We can speed that up and we can slow that down through our actions. I will say that retaining is not the only one of those things that can help slow it down, right? And even then, in a certain balance that works for you, right? Good nutrition, being in nature, getting sunlight, breathing quality air, right? Quality water, right? The quality of our food. There's the quality of our social experience, our environment. And that's not just like, oh, is there asbestos in the ceiling and everything else? Like, no, the quality of, do we have a safe place to be? Do we feel safe, right? Do we have stress hormones running all the time because either what we're eating or because we're just stressed out? We hate our jobs. We're not sleeping well, right? Or we're in a relationship that's very difficult, has lots of ups and downs, right? So my point is, I don't want to scare you and say that, yes, every time that you like ejaculate, you are aging faster, because you're aging every single day, whether you ejaculate or not. If you didn't, you would still be aging. Now, if you are releasing in a completely excessive amount, right? Like to the point where you're already exhausted and you still, have something in your brain that's saying, oh my gosh, I need more. And it's overriding all of your body's natural things to say, I want to sleep, I want to rest. Then from there, you're starting to accelerate things, right? If you're feeling so vibrant and you're so full of energy, you're eating well and you're getting all the other positive things, and once in a while your body cannot handle all the excess energy, a release at that point is way, 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 way less harmful. And for some people, isn't even harmful at all, right? So it's all about balance. A release or a relapse is not a release, right? It depends on the situation. It depends on the time frame. I've done videos on the channel. You're welcome to look them up, where I go more into that, where I talk about the Taoist formula, where it deals in energy units. And the younger you are, the more of an allowance you have before the energy really starts to affect you significantly. And that's just, again, a rule of thumb. Some people are very physically ill or physically drained or just don't have a ton of energy. And some people are bursting with way too much energy and they can't handle full-on retention, right? Because they don't know how, they can't channel it, or their body just saying, hey, whoa, dude, like we are overpowered right now. The bucket is overflowing, and that's not, we want the bucket full. We don't want the bucket overflowing unless we can figure out a way to reroute that effectively. So I hope that answers your question. So I would say the dose makes the poison. If some people can retain for a really long time, do really well, channel it, and just have amazing benefits, right? Some people can channel it really well for a month or for 2 months or something like that. And then from there, they can't think about anything else. They can't move. They can't sit still. They're angry. They're agitated. They're sad. They're whatever, right? Someone in the second situation, maybe if they quote unquote relapsed or released once, they would feel a lot better, not a lot worse, right? So I've seen it with a lot of different people. Sometimes it's better. Now there's a healthy way to do it and a not healthy way to do it. And once is different from spending a whole weekend, doing it 10 times, right? So, but that's what I'm saying. Some people break a streak and then they do it 20 times and then they start again. That is not the same as doing it once and then not doing it again for another month or another 2 weeks or something, right? So once you start doing it excessively, yes, it will age you faster for sure. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Can you also talk about why there's a strong desire to be lazy and eat junk food after a relapse? It seems the intensity of pleasure and duration is correlated with the intensity of laziness. Great question. Okay. Strong desire to be lazy and eat junk food after a relapse. This is a complicated question because there's a physical component to this, and then there's a mindset component to this, right? And the physical component is like, yes, I've just gotten rid of a certain amount of nutrition. Also, a lot of times in nature, when like lions are like reproducing or something, they're not doing like a 3-hour marathon session, edging, building up dopamine and all this kind of stuff, stress, like building their body to like maximum tension and then releasing, right? It's like done in like 30 seconds, maybe. You know what I mean? So it's a very different type of, and then they just move on with their life. They're not thinking about sex for the rest of the day, right? But humans, it's like, it depends. Especially if you're using something artificial, right? If you're using like pornography or something like that, it's going to be a much more draining release, especially if you take a long time to savor because you were on such a long streak or anything else like that. That will create quite a crash, right? If you're surfing a huge wave, it's going to create a crash, right? And sometimes it can be brutal. So, like eating junk food and relapsing, one, your body, if you kind of edge to excess and stuff like that, you're creating a much harder crash. Your body needs a lot more, right? If you just have a quick and simple, ideally positive sexual interaction after like a decent streak, you probably wouldn't need junk food and that kind of stuff. The other thing though, the other prong that I'm talking about is mindset. If you're going to say, oh, I've been doing all these great positive things that have been stacking on top of each other. I've been retaining. Now I'm working out, or I'm taking cold showers. That's a common one, right? Or I'm doing push-ups every day. I'm walking. I'm interacting with people, right? You're building all these positive habits, right? And then you'll have some like unexpected sexual urge or something like that, and you'll relapse. And then your mindset is like, oh, my streak is over. My superpowers are gone. So like, I might as well have a cheeseburger, right? And then, eat fast food for a week and then start over, right? So like the mindset can kind of cause that a lot too. If you see a relapse or a release as a failure, you're much more likely to eat junk food and be lazy. If you see it as, oh, my body just needed a release right now because it's seriously been a month or 2 months, right? Or 2 weeks for some people with very high sex drives, and then just release it. You probably still, if it's truly been long enough where your body is overflowing, you won't miss the excess. Like one release off the top's not a big deal. If your bucket is like slowly overflowing with energy, right? And then you just like release a little bit off the top and your bucket's still full, you're probably feeling great still. If you spill a little bit off the top to get rid of the overflow, and then you're like, well, I might as well dump the bucket out, now your bucket's empty and you're going to be eating crap and being really lazy and tired. Does that make sense, Light? Like that it's it's easy to ask these questions and just kind of be straight up, but it really depends. Like that's why I talk to people individually, and someone will ask this question and they'll just do it once and be, oh yeah, no big deal. And someone else will be, oh, I heard it was no big deal. So I spent like 13 weeks just like off the horse because it just kept getting more and more compounding in a downward negative spiral, right? And that negative spiral like just creates this thing where it gets harder and harder and harder and harder to get back on the wagon, and not just for like a retention streak, but then to be working out again, to be doing the cold showers or good nutrition, right? Good social interaction. You want to be around people because you're feeling better about yourself and you have more energy, right? All of those things compound. That's why, as I was saying in the beginning of this call, like mindset is really important. Yeah, that makes sense. Animals only do it for like 30 seconds and then move on as if nothing happened. Yeah. Why are we like this? Because we're hedonistic. I mean, more so than I would say any other animal. Why are we like that? With the face palm emoji. Love that. Yeah, it's because we like want an experience. If that's the irony with like NoFap if you stop, like, people who think NoFap's crazy or ridiculous are usually people who don't have a problem with it. Like, there are people who are like problematic and they're like addicts and stuff like that, and they just won't ever admit it. But there are other people who just have a healthy sexual thing, or they have a partner and they just, when they feel like that excess energy come up, or their partner feels that they have a sexual experience together, and then they don't think about it again until they want to do another one, right? But without the extra, part of the problem is we have hyperstimuli, right? We have artificial stimuli, we have porn and billboards and all kinds of things trying to get you to look at that stuff to sell products, right? Or to, sex sells and everything else like that. So we are being marketed to take advantage of those animal, dopamine things that we do have, and in the hedonistic type of way. So if that makes sense, if you just, when your bucket was really overflowing, and if you want to channel it to try to get more energy, great, channel it. If you really can't, releasing once and not spending 3 hours, spending 30 seconds like the lion or something. And if it's been a really long time, it'll only take 30 seconds. I'll tell you what, right? So not to be crude, right? But our culture's like, oh yeah, like you want to go for hours and hours. Like, really, I don't believe that to be super healthy or supernatural to do. I think it's part of like sexual culture, or more gratification for a partner than for ourselves. So true. Yeah, thanks, man. Any more questions? I'm gonna get to Alo's question, but you have any more, drop them in there. I will get to them, because appreciate you guys showing up. Thanks for watching the videos, and thanks for being here. Alo, thoughts on astrology as a means of self-development, perhaps a future direction of the channel to explore. Cool. Astrology is a very interesting thing. I very much like astrology, and I think astrology is really interesting because it is another ancient tool of self-exploration, right? And anytime we have, anytime we're wanting to improve ourselves, right? We're working with very limited information about ourselves. Like, so a lot of people go their whole lives and don't know anything about themselves, right? Really can't honestly, they think they do, but like, unfortunately, a lot of layers that ourselves that we hide from ourselves or don't look at. I think astrology is really great because it's like a neutral tool that may not be accurate all the time or anything. It may not be accurate very much at all, but it's a neutral tool that can shine in our faces, kind of like weaknesses that we have for ourselves, right? Like, that if a friend said it to us, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just jealous, right? Or if like we try to say it to ourselves, we would just, cognitive dissonance, and we'd explain it away or deny it or whatever. When it's like an astrology chart, or like a book or something like that, or someone that doesn't even know you, or it's coming from some kind of very neutral source like that, it's a lot easier to take it and say, hey, maybe I do have like really intense portions of my personality. Maybe I do, or I'm very prone to hypersensitivity, and I very much care what everyone has to say about me or whatever, right? And it just creates an opportunity for a little bit of neutrality. So not only that, but there's all kinds of application with astrology. So again, it's not a silver bullet. It's not like horoscopes or like future prediction or anything else like that. Anything like that is like a gold standard or anything to follow, right? But when it comes to like self-exploration, any kind of tool that you can use, especially one where you can like tap into energy a little bit, it could be a very positive mirror to hold up to yourself and be honest and say, hey, like, all right, is this what I'm like? Is this the hurdle that I keep running into? And it's just a lot of times easier to be honest with yourself. So also very much like this from Alo. Also very much like the lion analogy. There's a difference between enjoying sharing a moment and overindulging or searching to fill emotional gaps with physical stimuli. Yes, right. So light, like Alo just said, there's the actual physical side, and then there's the mindset side. There's also, like, as Alo points out, the emotional side, right? Like, maybe you want to indulge in this there's also the whole, which is very popular in the NoFap community. There's the whole like, oh, like being good at sex or having a lot of sexual partners is like a very positive thing. Like, if I'm going to self-develop, I need to be very good at having sex with lots of people, or I need to be very good at whatever. And sex becomes, because it's also like you get a dopamine hit no matter how you release, right? It becomes an escape tool as well. So you can use it to cover up emotional pain. You can use it to cover up senses of inadequacy, or you can just use it as an escape in general, just similar to any kind of drug, right? Alcohol or drugs. You can use it as an escape, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Alo. I really agree. You know, having a connective experience, or even just like with yourself, but without a screen and without taking 3 hours and looking for the perfect, right? Like all that's doing is messing your brain up, really, and messing your emotion up and messing your body up too. Because I really don't believe, this is me personal, right? You can talk to whatever guru you want, but I don't believe that like building up a release and then holding it back. I think edging is just so horrible for you. I think it's terrible for your brain, and I think it's really bad for you physically too. And I know people who have like, created some pretty bad urological problems from doing that too much. So yes. So overindulging, searching to fill emotional gaps with physical stimuli. Again, it can be used as a drug instead of like its natural intention, which is to reproduce, right? And humans can isolate and extract and take advantage of anything over and over. Oh, this is supposed to be to, make a baby. It's like, this is so much fun if I do it this way, and it goes too far and it harms us. Okay. Thanks, Alo. All right, Light with another question. What's the reason for the chaser effects? Even if I want to move on after a relapse, my mind makes me want to relapse again so that I'm fully drained or stratified. So you can look up the chaser effect. There is a decent amount of science on it. And there are articles and things about it. But my take and my understanding on the chaser effect is that, again, there is a physical chaser effect. It's almost like a like you said, even if you want to move on after a relapse, your mind makes you want to release again. So that I'm fully drained or satisfied, right? And I got you. Yeah, satisfied. I don't think it's necessarily like your body wants to make sure you're satisfied. I think what happens is that after a release, your body is working physically very hard to replenish what was lost. Because usually if you retain for a long time, you're cultivating and distilling down some very high quality components, right? And I think because there's also a whole hormonal cascade, right? So after a release, you're releasing prolactin. That's what you ask why you're tired and lazy. Didn't mention that in the earlier thing, right? Slipped by. But hormonally, prolactin, which is it's a stress hormone, but it also is a relaxation and satiation hormone. And that's what also the elevated levels of prolactin, which are triggered by an ejaculation, bring kind of like a tired, lazy, satisfied, sometimes maybe not, right? And as your body tries to replenish that, there's a whole hormonal cascade that happens, leading that maybe in about 24 hours time, around there. Again, slightly different for everybody. You will feel another like after wave of maybe, sexual desire, arousal, something like that, right? My take on that is that it's also your body like replenishing that and kind of making sure the sexual function's still there, ready to go. If it is a reproduction situation, like a lion, for example, has a harem, right? He's not just getting with one of them, right? His job is to get with many and, increase the pride. And their job is to gestate, right? And protect and then bring the baby into the world, right? So they have different kind of roles. So it's super interesting to think about. There's all that kind of stuff. But I would say there's a mental one, right? Like once you break the seal of like that dopamine hit, your body wants dopamine again. It's kind of like with any other drug. At first you're like, oh, okay, I'm burnt out or I'm hungover. But then like 24 hours later, you're like, well, okay, yeah, I mean, that was cool. That was fun. Let's do that again, right? So there's some of both that happens. There's a physical component, at least two things. There's a physical component and probably a mental, psychological, emotional component at the very least. Does that make sense, Light? So just because you feel an urge doesn't mean that your body's not satisfied or you need to release more or whatever else like that. I think taking time Because there is like the 7-day testosterone cycle where you will almost always, if you're doing like 7-day streaks, on days 5 to 7, you're almost always going to feel a boost. That's just your body's natural cycle. Testosterone starts raising at 5, it peaks at day 7, and then it drops off again after that. So that's why, for a lot of people, 7-day cycle makes sense if they're healthy and stuff like that, and they aren't willing or able or interested in a longer streak than that. 7s are pretty great for as like a minimum for hormonal optimization. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks so much for your question. It's you guys are getting into some interesting stuff. I really appreciate it. This is a fun conversation. It's a fun little exchange for sure. It's it all comes down to very similar things. I mean, at the essence of, again, this is for NoFap, but for any kind of self-development, right? It's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not to say, oh my gosh, I stumbled. Oh my gosh, I skipped. I was supposed to work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I skipped Friday. So I'm going to skip Monday and Wednesday as well. So then I have like a full week. See where it just starts like, it doesn't matter. You skip Friday, just get back on the horse, right? And don't see it as a slip up. See it as, oh, I got an extra rest day. I probably needed it, and I'll come back even harder and set some PRs on Monday, right? Some personal records and do even better, right? So often we see any sense of inadequacy or any like small slip up as this failure, as this, oh, it wasn't perfect, so next time it'll be perfect, And guess what? Perfect's impossible. So that's why perfect is the enemy of good, because we could be making steady incremental progress all the time, right? We could be making that steady incremental progress all the time, but instead it's like, hey, no, the incremental progress is boring. I want the big stuff. I'm going for it. I'm getting superpowers. I'm putting my cape on. I'm taking off out of there. And if I can't do that, I don't even want the small stuff. But the small incremental stuff is what, like, boom, that brings stuff, way up there. And it's really like a positive experience in that kind of way. It's really cool. And over time we say, hey, look at all the stuff I have to show for it because I've been doing these little things, right? So yeah. Alo, perhaps future shows could explore how to harmonize male and female energies. Female low libido plays into these conversations as well, but can be hard to see while focused on our own stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's a lot of yin and yang with the male female, right? And there's a lot of polarity, and this came up in the first live stream I did last month. It was kind of about male and female polarity, male and female energy, right? And sometimes being like hyper masculine can really bring out the divine feminine in your partner or in a female, or whatever. But sometimes being too much so where it's out of balance, like you're hypersexual, like it's not a natural thing. A lot of females, like, feminine energy is very attuned to, like, is the more intuitive energy, right? So the feminine energy can generally sense when you are in or out of balance. When you are, oh, he wants to have sex with me again because he's just, because he's aroused, or, oh, he wants to have sex with me again because he's really because he's really attracted to me. They're like completely different things, and female energy really picks up on that stuff, right? So sometimes your masculine energy, when it's in its power and it's grounded and it's like full, is like very attractive and can awaken a female sexual response quite a bit. But when it's like forced or faked or stuff like that, or it's artificially brought up because of porn or stimuli or this environment, that usually turns off the feminine attraction. So, yeah. So that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Alo. And yeah, harmonizing the male and female energies. Yeah, I would love to spend more time on that. It's super interesting. So yeah, I appreciate or willing to field any questions in that sphere. Thanks so much. All right, Light feels as if the healthier I eat or live, the shorter my streak gets as I'm I'm assuming that's as if I'm recovering too soon. Well, okay. Feels as if the healthier I eat or live, the shorter your streak gets. As well, okay. So this one depends a lot. There's can be a lot of reasons for that, right? So like if your streak's getting shorter because you're feeling healthier, it might be because if you're truly eating healthier and you're getting all your nutrition, especially if you're getting adequate zinc and selenium and things like that, your sex drive will go up, right? Which is going to be your sex drive will go up. If you are not eating well and you're not living well and you're sleeping all the time and trying to just catch up to stuff, it makes sense that your streak's going to get shorter, or you can go for a longer time. Like I said, I've seen certain people go super duper duper long, but they clearly weren't healthy and they had absolutely zero libido, which is not a good sign of health, right? If your libido is just completely gone, like it's just like you just are not interested in anything else at all. A lot of times, not always, there are people with different sexual preferences or whatever, but oftentimes that means that there is something hormonally going on, or there's something nutritional deficiency going on, and it's actually a sign of poorer health, right? So there could be that aspect, right? Hey, friend, Logia, welcome to the conversation. Hop on in, ask any question or whatever else to finish up lights here. Good to see you. But if your streak is getting shorter, right, I'm sure there's more stuff going on in this 2 sentences you're saying. But as if you're recovering too soon, that seems kind of silly, right? Like the faster you recover, the better, right? I mean, you can't really recover too soon. If you don't want to trade poor health for a longer streak. That doesn't make sense, right? Because this is where like NoFap can get really problematic. If you're treating your streak number as like your value or your health, like, I went 3 weeks this one time, but I felt terrible and it was really hard, right? Versus like, oh yeah, like I was going 2 weeks and, then I was like, I was feeling amazing and great. And then, my sex drive was just crazy at the end of 2 weeks and, had one release and then was back on. It's a completely different thing, right? And so even though one, you look back and say, the 21-day streak and one you had 14, it's kind of like, right? Those are just numbers. What the quality of your experience is so much important. So quality over quantity, right? The quality of your streak light is way more important. And that's for anything, right? Because this is for self-development. This isn't to collect numbers. So whether it's like, I've done push-ups 100 days in a row versus like, I've done push-ups for the last 3 months. I don't do it every day. But one of them, the first one, you just kind of like, I don't have any energy, so I'll just bang out 3 push-ups or whatever. And you're not getting anything. And the second one, you're like spending a lot of intentional time and things like that. And you're doing really high quality ones. Your results might be way better not doing it every day, right? So the idea of a streak is just kind of like a streak's just kind of like a loose number. That's why it's so devastating to me when I see people like, I was on a 100-day streak and I'm, my body really needed a release and I wasn't able to channel it. I wasn't able to like transmute it or anything else like that. So now it's over. And then I went on a bender of relapses for 3 weeks. It's just so devastating. Like you did so much great work and you could be in a negative energy balance after that, just because of your mindset, just because you count it, don't count, if you have that kind of mentality, right? So true. Health should be a higher priority than a streak number. Yeah. You'd think that would be a little bit more, understood, but I do see a lot of people who will like be like beating themselves up to go through and drag through and push on. If you are a healthy human being, you are always going to be dealing with this to some degree, like sexual urges, right? Even without like that's in the absence of a hypersexualized world where you're surrounded by, you're surrounded by the opposite sex and it's becoming more and more risque, right? It's harder and harder to avoid, right? Trying to live like a monk in modern society is nearly impossible, right? Just because of what you're exposed to without your permission or your consent, right? But it's just kind of like the way it is, let alone everyone having like a supercomputer in their hands all the time, right? In the 80s, it was like, the amount of access you had to things was completely different than 40 years later. So point is, yes, health should always be a higher priority. And that's the thing about self-development in general, though, right? Is that the result should always be higher priority than the process, right? People are too process focused in my experience. People are too like, oh, yeah, just do these things. Long streak, cold showers, push-ups, and then go out, It's like, yeah, maybe. But like if after like a year of that, you don't feel any better and you're just constantly just failing on streaks and starting over, then your process is bad, right? Because like the point of a process is to create results. If you aren't getting results from your process is bad. And it doesn't matter if your process sounds good or that's what other people do or that's what other people have found success with. As we talked about earlier in the talk with Alo, right? About balance, right? It's about finding a balanced process for yourself that's interesting and fun and effective, right? Which would ideally lead to health, right? Health, holistic health across all metrics. So a sexual health, but also mental health, physical health, right? Like a lot of these quote unquote superpowers are just benefits of radiant health that can be achieved with 7-day streaks, right? Could you get more health from 14-day streaks? Probably. Yeah. Is it better to go 20 days on, 20 days off with multiple? No. Better off doing 7-day streaks, right? Is it better to go 30 days on and then 100 days off? No, that's worse. But that happens all the time, right? It doesn't matter what your longest streak was. I don't care. You might care, but you might care for the wrong reason, right? What I care is about people achieving the best version of themselves through real type of biometrics of health. And so like with my health background or whatever, biomarkers of health are way more important. And those are like numbers that actually matter like a lot more, right? Things like your body temperature and your pulse like are really great ways to just see how healthy you are right now. If you like, if you're doing this crazy kick and your temps are going down and your pulse is going down and you're producing less energy, then you're not transmuting it. That energy is going out the window, right? And so no streak's worth that. And maybe some of your habits that you think are healthy, there's lots of them out now, to intermittent fasting, dry fasting, hard. I've experimented with all of these and all of them can be used therapeutically, but some people take habits, NoFap or fasting or, veganism or keto and stuff like that. They'll take certain habits and they'll put them in their most extreme form. And then they'll like ride them forever as their health tanks because they're trying to keep a streak up, right? Oh, I was vegan for 5 years, but I felt amazing when I eat fish. I'm so conflicted. That's a difficult problem because of like what you've assimilated into and social criticism, but it's not a physical thing. You feel better when you do this thing, listen to your body, right? But I understand why people run into very difficulty with that. But it's the same with this, right? A longer streak doesn't equal better health necessarily, right? That's where introspection and balance point is really important. And that's why being more honest, and some videos will say, oh yeah, or Reddit posts and say, oh yeah, longer streaks are better and stuff like that. In general, probably, but you need to have your own barometer and be able to take control of your own health and your own awareness for your own self-development. So Alo says, health should definitely be the priority. And I think that looking into food quality and production is a great conversation to have too. Yeah, absolutely. Like, in general, and the higher the quality of your food, the less processed food and the more, high quality. And then of your whole foods, there's higher quality whole food, production, higher quality meat that has been eating, things that it's meant to eat versus being artificially inseminated and then artificially fattened and fed up and stuff, right? There are ways to support the better stuff. You just buy the higher quality meat from the smaller farmers and not the factories, right? Not everyone can afford to do that. There are diminishing things. There are incremental things that make it slightly better. Again, it's not all or nothing. Just because of that doesn't mean that veganism is the only choice, again, for health, right? Ethically, there's a whole different can of worms. There's a whole different type of that. But for health, there's all kinds of modifications you can make to the best of your ability. Anything you can do to research and educate yourself to be eating the highest quality food available to you, to breathing the highest quality air available to you, and drinking the highest quality water available to you will improve your health, right? And that's all incremental, and that should all make sense. Light. I've noticed about the face shape being better when I have a streak going. I wonder what's going on spiritually. Why does the universe give us strong sexual urge but reward us by abstaining? Yeah. Okay. Cool question, Light. So I would say the face shape is probably more of a physical benefit than a spiritual one, but I do believe that our physiology will change with our mood and our mindset. And that might sound out there for some people, but there are all kinds of studies about, I mean, if there's a stress response that happens from thinking something, and that stress response releases a bunch of hormones that cascade and cause degradation of body and stuff like that, then it can absolutely go the other way around, right? If you're having positive hormones flooding through and stuff like that, it can heal ailments and stuff like that to a reasonable degree, right? As far as like face shape changing, I've noticed during long streaks, again, there are things like elevated testosterone and all kinds of stuff. Now, if you can handle it, if you can handle that energy and still feel good, and it doesn't turn to anger or sadness, then that's great. You're channeling it well, and you can keep a long streak going, and it can remain a very positive thing. And I had a more chiseled jawline and stuff like that during like super long streaks. And then, but it would change all the time, right? And but it's a super interesting thing to think. I wonder if like on earlier streaks, your body's not used to that amount of like circulating testosterone and other hormonal cascades, and it's able to, and things happen differently the first time versus other times. But yeah, if you also have what you're asking, what happens spiritually too, if you're having really positive experiences with that, then like the spiritual and the physical do affect one another quite significantly in my experience. So I wouldn't be surprised at all that if you're having a positive experience spiritually and physically, they can add on to one another. So that's really great. Why does the universe give us strong sexual urge but reward us by abstaining? Well, I can't necessarily answer for the universe here, but I can give my thoughts on that. So we have strong sexual urge because there's also like evolution and conditioning and things like that, right? There's the physical body, and then there's the spiritual body. Like we were talking about lions reproducing earlier, right? Is that a spiritual experience for the lion to, make love and transcend the experience, with the other lion? Maybe, probably not, right? So like humans have more of an interest in spirituality, at least expressly, than a lot of animals, but animals have all these instincts. Who knows? I mean, they could be more in spiritual touch. All of them could be, some of them could be, none of them could be, right? But there's all kinds of things going on with that all the time. So like, it's not necessarily like, oh, the universe is testing us by giving us urges and then having benefits from overcoming it. It's more just like we as humans have overindulged in the tech and the exploiting of like the hyper palatable, turning sex into a drug pretty much through porn, and subliminal things and erotica and smut and whatever else that are, absorbed by both sexes, right? And that cater to them, men more visual, women more emotional and cerebral. And it's more like we're exposed to all that kind of stuff. And like when we don't overindulge past our body's natural points, yeah, we do better. I'm not sure it's necessarily the universe testing us, but there is also benefit that we receive exemplifying self-discipline and overcoming vices that we have, right? Things that make us weaker when we override that and like say, no, I'm not going to do that. There are positive benefits that come in our brain and in our body for pretty much having the courage to stand up for ourselves and be brave for ourselves, right? So, yeah, I don't necessarily think it's like this cosmic laughing, the universe laughing at us. Ha, I'm going to make them all really horny and also, have it destroy them and who can be strong. I don't think it's necessarily like that, but it's interesting that it feels that way sometimes, right? rewards like women, people, animals, attraction, other celibate benefits. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of benefits to like celibacy. There's lots of benefits to like at least physically and spiritually, right? But there are drawbacks. Like there are things that you don't get to participate in. There are things you'll get left out of, or there are things that you'll just have more difficulty overcoming it in a world that is not celibate, in a world that average is more hedonistic, especially in the West, right? Now, I'm not saying it's not worth pursuing or anything else like that. It absolutely is. There are immense benefits. But the point is to not fall, again, into the all or nothing type of thing. That's all I mean, is that even if you're not full celibate, you can still have tremendous benefits from not overindulging in sexual activity, not overindulging in drugs, not overindulging in junk food, right? It doesn't mean you can never have it, right? If you like ice cream, like, you know, you might be able to fit ice cream into a healthy thing every single freaking night if it doesn't take your life over. If you're having it for every meal, it's a different story. It's the same with sex, right? Like some people have enough energy and they aren't using, like, they aren't edging and they aren't doing, because there's also things like edging, and then you release like more than you would if it was just the 30-second lion shebang, right? And there's all these different types of things, right? So balance is what is important. The spirituality, there are all those kinds of benefits, right? But by not doing it perfectly, not being perfectly pure in mind and body from now until forever, you can still get a ton of those benefits. So like, don't turn it into all or nothing, right? So thanks for that, Light.